All righty. I'm glad you guys are here today. I'm glad you survived the week and weekend. Did you guys do anything fun or was it all hard work?
There was a lot of hard work on my end. I've been really caught up in stuff this week. It's felt like a much slower week than usual.
I Sometimes it's nice to have those so that you can get caught up. I have a tendency though to when things slow down, instead of getting caught up on everything that needs to be, I have a tendency to kind of just get distracted a little doing the stuff that's more fun. Oh well. Well, this week I wanted to talk more about the the texture and color tile cubes. Talk about those a little bit more. And we have two new. And Tanis, I saw that you reworked your video and to include the updated um, citations. And we already watched yours, didn't we, Tanis?
Yes.
Okay. Um, it didn't look like you changed anything other than just that last page. So we do have two others that were turned in, and I'd like to watch both of those. Um, I'm really impressed with how thorough people are being. It seems like the only issue with any of these has been issues with the citations, and that's something that is really important to do correctly, but it's something that not everybody has a lot of experience doing. And because, we're artists. If we could write really well, we'd be writers, not artists. But it's good to have these kinds of skills, especially as you guys are prepared for graduation. I think everybody's required also to take ethics classes or the equivalent and some higher level English classes. And so just going through the routines of research are going to be really important. And especially as after you guys graduate, do your first couple books and exhibition tours and all that kind of stuff and become world famous artists, it'll be really important to know how to cite all your research. I have a little bit of experience with that myself, being a minor celebrity in Utah, having to sign one or two autographs every year. It takes a lot out of my time schedule. That is known as sarcastic humor, by the way. All righty. So we are going to go ahead, if it's okay with you guys. I want to go ahead and move forward in that. I also want to look at some more images of the or biomorphic carvings because I think some people reworked them. Like I said, I have not done the grading on those. I wanted everybody to get a chance to fiddle with them. I am going to be going through and I have been grading and I will be going through and hopefully get all caught up by this weekend. Okay, so and if you guys want me to cover anything more specifically, go ahead and let me know. I think um, at the beginning here, we're going to go ahead and just watch two that were turned in that we haven't seen before. If that's all right with you guys. Even if it's not all right, we're going to do it anyway. Okay, let's see. I'm going to wonder who did this one. This one is done by Jessica. Can you guys see this? It should be full screen and say over time his work.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is Jessica's research on Slinkachu.
Hi, my name is Jessica Greenlaw, and I will be doing my presentation on the street artist Slinkachu. Who is Slinkachu? Slinkachu, his real name is actually Stuart Ponto. He was born in 1979 and grew up in Devon, which is southwest England. He has lived in London since 2003. He was originally trained in advertising and he maintained a hobby of making wooden figures, but he left his job in advertising to pursue his art full time in 2006. How he came to be. His name. Linkachu is an accidental name derived from an old nickname at the university. He said it was used as a username to sign up for accounts online. By default, it became the first name he used when uploading his first images to his blog. Slinkachu said using a pseudonym is handy. I would prefer people to think about the characters in my work rather than the person who has done it. Slinkachu is known for being the maker of the world's smallest street art. Slinkachu is known for being a sculptor, a street artist, and a photographer. He makes minifigure sculptures, photographs them, and then abandons them in the streets. He takes mini models from train sets and he remodels them with clay and other objects and he paints them to create different characters. He stated that he prefers models created by German companies because they are more detailed than most. He paints them and moves them. His props are everyday objects. He usually walks around for hours to find the right place to put his art. He places them in unexpected places, though. He's more interested in finding the small hidden pockets of nature in the city, and he makes them beautiful. Then he travels all over the world with his little people. He usually plans 3 to 4 weeks in advance. As well as in public, he shows his installations in galleries all over the world, though. His inspiration. Ever since he was a little boy, Slinkachu has had a fascination with small things. His dad made him a train set when he was younger, but he said he wasn't interested in the trains. The figures, houses, and trees fascinated him the most. He also finds a lot of inspiration in his home city, which has a large graffiti art scene. Why? The meaning behind his pieces are not too deep or specific. Most of the time, he just wants people to make up their own interpretations and stories behind them. He wants people to think about themselves when they are looking at the work rather than the person that did it. That's why he leaves them behind. He says, I don't really know what happens to them once I'm done with them. I don't usually go back to them to see if they are still there or if others have noticed them. He said that leaving them behind after photographing them has always been a part of the work. He doesn't feel attached to them. When he first started out, he didn't even take pictures and would just leave them. It's cathartic to him. Over time, his work has gotten more political. He says he doesn't try to usually make it political, but it just has kind of evolved that way. They are cliches about the city, landmarks, and political events. He said that it felt the opposite of regular street art that is big and noticeable. The point of street art, though, is for it to interact with the passerby, no matter how big or small. It's a metaphor for how people feel when you live in a large city. You feel small and anonymous. Life's challenges in a life that is bigger than you. Here are a few of his installations that I found fun. I really enjoy his style because it's just very different from what I'm usually creating as an artist. I think that it is really cool that he chooses places that usually are overlooked and not so beautiful, and he makes them his own. I think it's really interesting what he can envision in these places. Here are more examples of his work that I found very fun and very interesting. I thought about how I usually walk around cities and what I usually notice. And I know for a fact that I would easily miss these things. One, because they're so small. And two, they're in places that often get overlooked. It makes me want to pay attention to my surroundings more and see what I can find. I really think that it's interesting that he decides to leave his art behind for people to find them. Sometimes people notice them, but not all the time. And I really understand why. I mean, look at him installing his pieces in the picture in the bottom left. They're so tiny and can easily be missed. And like I had said before in the previous slide, he puts them in places that are unexpected and oftentimes overlooked. Something that I really found funny that he said in an interview was that when he's installing, people often misinterpret what he's actually doing. A fireman once stopped him and thought he had fallen over and needed help getting up. And so did many other people that had walked back past him. And then another time, a policeman stopped him and questioned him because he had his glue in his hand and he thought that Slinkachu was sniffing glue, when in reality, he was just trying to glue his pieces together and install his art. And here are my sources.
I like this one too. I think that this one turned out really well. I thought Jessica was very thorough in talking about Slinkachu, and it was interesting to me. There was a lot of depth in there, like his real name, for example, talking about his interviews, talking about how people interacted with him while he was setting up the street art and all those kinds of things, and a little bit more about his motivations, where it seems like he's less intending to be political. It just kind of happens. And even though it does seem like his stuff does seem to be political, maybe a lot of that is what viewers overlay on it, especially his earlier stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. What did you guys think?
I really liked it when she mentioned that Slinkachu leaves behind his art because I could never do that. I'm really sentimental about everything I make. So just the idea of doing that and an artist being able to just leave it behind like that is really impressive to me, if that makes sense. And then I was also reminded of I think his name is Banksy, the graffiti artist, because
Right,
much like Slinkachu, he also leaves his art behind, but the big difference is that his is like inherently intentionally political, while Slinkachu's is not.
right. Yeah, and I was thinking about those same things because I've gotten better, but I usually get so emotionally attached to what I'm doing, not necessarily because of what it is, but because of all the things I'm learning, all the things that whatever I make, all those associations it causes within me, I don't want to leave it alone. And so when I hear he just walks away, I'm thinking, man, that guy he must be really strong to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm it's interesting because Tanis, your thoughts mirror a lot of mine. But I thought that Jessica did a good job showing us the world of Slinkachu. Right now, this one, let's see. I'm sorry. This one is by Kim. It's on Ron Muick. All right.
Artist Review, Ron Muick by Kim Shepro. Ron Muick is an Australian-born artist known for his hyper-realistic sculptures that range from unusually small to monumentally larger than life. Originally sculpting from fiberglass, he switched to silicone with implanted hair, which adds to their realistic appearance. His sculptures are often of deeply personal content, and he rarely reveals the meaning behind them. Muick has been creating from a young age. Having been born into a family of puppet and doll makers, he grew up with a love for creatures, costumes, and puppets, which propelled him into a career in television and film. He worked on many kids' shows, designing and handling puppets, and eventually began his employment with Jim Henson Studios, where he stayed until his move into the art world in 1996. His best-known work in film is the movie Labyrinth, a Jim Henson production with David Bowie. Muick's talent in puppetry is well exhibited in this classic tale, where he designed, handled, and voiced the beloved character Ludo. His move into artistic sculpture began with a commission from his mother-in-law, the artist Paula Rigo. His sculpture Pinocchio accompanied Paula's painting Geppetto Washing Pinocchio in an exhibition and was a success. The line of evolution from puppets to his lifelike figures pressed on, and the following year he gained international attention with his controversial piece called Dead Dad, his most vulnerable and emotional piece, marking the loss of his own father. The softness and flexibility of silicone closely resembles skin, and the humanness of these forms is displayed in each uniquely placed freckle, hair strand, toenail, and eyelash. Muick's artwork has been called spooky, weird, eloquent, bizarre, shockingly real, and shockingly unreal. His work is so lifelike it is hard to resist touching it to see for yourself. Robert Rosenblum, a prominent art curator and art historian, said of Muick, he dares to tackle the kind of subjects avoided by most contemporary artists, namely the timeless, universal cycles of human existence, from womb to the tomb. Muick's 5-meter untitled work, known as Boy, features a crouching child that fills the room floor to ceiling. This monumental work signifies the inevitability of growing up, a human experience we are no stranger to. Muick's work not only feels alive, but seems to bear soul, and is part of the reason it is so captivating. His collection of sculptures exploring motherhood express the emotional and physical toll that comes with it. Examining his work is like catching a glimpse into the struggles of these characters' lives and making connections with them. We can see ourselves in them, relate to them, and have empathy for them. Sometimes his sculptures take more than a year to make. Dark Place took 7 years to complete and successfully sets the atmosphere for emotion. It's uncomfortable, creepy, and vulnerable, but also incredible. What do you feel when you see Dark Place? With no background or explanation of these figures, their meaning is left up to us as the viewers. But with his impeccable ability to portray emotion, their background seems less important, and their emotion is the part that truly connects us to these figures. In the end, Ron Muick's sculptures remind us that art isn't only about what we see, but about what we feel. Through the stillness of his figures, he captures the pulse of life itself, fragile, raw, and profoundly human.
That one was really good too. I One thing I really liked about that is again talking about the history of the artist and then connecting some of the sculptures that were discussed by that Kim talked about with life events like the death of his own father, and different things like that. And I like that. I don't think anybody's ever talked about his stuff working with Jim Henson before, or Henson Studios. So I thought that was really interesting. And I had no idea that he was Ludo in the Labyrinth. So what did you think about this one, Jassiel?
I thought this one, I really like the artist for this one. The it When I first saw it, like the his work in the video, um, the first thing I thought was like, oh, this would be really cool in a movie, and then the next thing she talked about was about how his work in movies like Labyrinth. So I thought that was a really good plug-in. I also like how she talked about the meaning behind his works and stuff, and connecting that to what art historians are saying. So that was really well done.
Yeah, I thought it was really well done. So very, very good. Excellent. Now, I think that there's a few more of these that have to be done. I think maybe like 5 or 6 need to be done. So please do that. And then we also have a couple critiques as well, I believe. Let's see, a self-critique and a peer critique. And both of these are about 5 or 6 minutes long. And I'm thinking that I just want to do one of them. So this will be, I believe that this is going to be a self-critique that we're going to look at. And I think this is like the second person who's done a self-critique. So these need to be done by the end of the month, I believe. If you guys get them done in the next week, I will give you extra credit. So, you get them done before Sunday. Let's see. And again, this assignment is for everybody, and it's using the 4 tools of artistic critique. Between Tanis, between you and Jassiel, do you guys remember what the 4 tools of artistic critique are? Do you remember what the first tool is?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. If I remember correctly, weren't they oh shoot, I had an acronym that I set up for myself. I can't remember the acronym. Wasn't this might be out of order. I don't know if there's a specific order. Something like analysis, description, judgment, and interpretation.
Yes, and you've got it halfway in order. The first one is to describe. So you
Oh, right.
um, talk about your encounter with whatever it is you're looking at. The second tool is analysis, where you talk about how it was made, or you extrapolate how it was made. The third is interpret. What could it possibly mean? And the fourth is evaluation. So yeah, so you got all of them right, just in a slightly creative order. And these are, so I want everybody to revisit that page. And as you go through and we start getting more responses to different things, I really want people to uh, to just work to remember what those steps are and see what other places you can apply that critique rhythm to that aren't just artwork. And I think I've had people who are computer programmers, pen testers, nurses, engineers, grounds crew personnel. And even electricians. I've had a lot of people take those 4 tools and apply them to the jobs that they have outside of school, and even in other classes too. One person I remember told me they were having a particularly difficult time with their professional writing class. And when they applied the 4 tools of artistic critique to what they were doing, they said it made it come together a lot better for them. So, but yeah, those are the 4 tools, and I want you to listen for them as we watch this self critique by Reagan, and then we'll talk about it when we're done.
Hello, my name is Regan Turley, and today I will be critiquing.
Okay, can you hear this? The sound is a little bit low, so I'm going to turn this up and then turn it back down again after we watch the video.
My own work. This piece
Yeah,
is
sounds
called
good.
Childhood Bit and was made September 24th, 2025. The materials used in it are 2 different kinds of wire. One is a thin silver jewelry wire, and the second is a thicker black industrial wire. The content of the work is a realistic bear that is sitting down. The colors are neutral, with the majority of the wire being black, and smaller details stand out in silver wire that gives the viewer the appearance of stitching. The lines of the piece are curved and flowing with organic loops and spirals that lead the viewer's eye throughout the bear. Circular shapes such as circles and ovals are repeated throughout, creating an overall harmony, while sections where wire has been repeatedly wrapped around itself give that area weight and emphasis. The imperfections of the wire give the bear a handmade human quality that furthers the appearance of a worn childhood bear. The coiled wrappings and knotted areas of the wire that you can see in the big nose and the other wire areas of silver wire that hold the piece together give the sculpture a sense of unity and harmony throughout. The negative shapes between the wire are as important as the wire itself. These negative shapes are delineated forms, and you can see them especially where the shapes are created between the wires of the torso and appear to curve and give the sculpture its volume. The first thing I noticed when looking at this piece is the way the bear kind of slumps to one side, giving the apparent appearance of wear that sells the idea that it is representing a well-loved stuffed animal. The sculpture uses the elements of design to achieve the principles of design. The single material wire creates immediate visual harmony for the viewer. The consistent gestural hand-bent line quality of the wire adds to this harmony, in addition to how the wire of each part of the bear appears to flow into one another. It does not look like there are separate sections to the bear, but instead, like the wire continuously bends from one organic shape to the next, creating the feeling of a single unified object. Variety and contrast is created by dense wire areas next to empty negative areas, and from the difference in the width and color between the black wire and silver wire used. Balance is achieved in the piece from how the large spherical head at the top of the bear is balanced out by the two larger legs that extrude from the lower body out into the viewer's space. Additionally, the smaller arms of the bear come down from the shoulders to rest on the floor in between the two large legs. Although not identical, the four legs in the front give a further sense of symmetrical balance. Rhythm and movement is achieved through the curved lines that appear almost like waves in the torso that move the viewer's eye up and all around through the shoulder to the head, back to the arms, and then down to the legs. Because of the hand-bent quality, the wire has an energy that allows the viewer to explore it and not leave the piece once the first look is completed. The focal point of the piece is the nose because it's the densest and darkest part of the sculpture, and it is surrounded by negative space that further draws attention to the nose. The viewer's eye is drawn in to the nose and then roams around the bear because of the curvilinear shapes that further bring the viewer's eye around. The head is slightly exaggerated and oversized in related proportion to the body and gives the sculpture a childlike quality. The elongated limbs also add to this effect. The size of the sculpture is the same as an actual stuffed bear, giving a sense of realism to the piece. The material allows for the focus of the work to be on the contour line that easily allows for the creation of curved organic shapes and forms. The work is accessible to the simple materials and minimal tools. Just pliers and hands are required. The work has simplified the shape of the bear to not be hyper-realistic, but is still representative. The piece has a formal quality that focuses on exploring line quality. The artist wants to bring to mind the viewer's childhood by showing a stuffed bear. The piece hopes to draw on the viewer's nostalgic memories and bring their feelings to mind from their childhood. When viewing the piece, my own worn childhood bear with many rips and tears comes to mind, along with the memory of when I was gifted the bear by my parents. Yes, my thoughts have changed since I first saw the work. Analyzing and exploring the work further has allowed me to appreciate all the ways that Elements and principles of design have come together to achieve a successful work of art. I think the work has intrinsic value because it connects to the viewer's own childhood and invites them to remember and contemplate happy memories. It also communicates that you can make a beautiful and important work of art from simple wire and limited tools.
Okay, sorry for the delay. I was trying to turn the volume down so I didn't blow your eardrums out. There are several things that I really, really like about this. One is that Reagan worked very hard so that it didn't seem like they were talking about their own work, which I really appreciate that. And that's one of the things. The key to doing a successful self-critique is to divorce yourself entirely from your own work and pretend it's the first time you've ever seen it. And Reagan did a really good job doing that. Another thing that I noticed that I really like, and I don't know if you guys picked up on it, but they went through each and all the questions on that Four Tools of Artistic Critique page, and they went through and used a lot of the vocabulary we've been talking about this whole semester so far. So, up to and including delineated forms that we talked about, 2 quizzes ago. So I thought that was really well done. Um, Going from this very intense descriptions all the way through to connotations with childhood memories. I thought this was really well done. What did you guys think about this?
I thought this was also really well done. I did notice that she was using like a lot of the vocabulary that we were learning from the textbooks and the quizzes and stuff. So I thought that was really impressive. And also just I also noticed that she was going through the tools of artistic critique. So um that was really well done too. Just the way that she went about it.
Yeah, it was really nicely organized, and she didn't have to do the organization by herself because she just followed down the worksheet, doing the questions. I like the fact that she didn't ask the questions out loud, but we could tell what questions she was responding to because we're familiar with that worksheet as well. So yeah, I thought that was nicely done. Okay, we most of these need to be done by people, and I would like again. I said there should be enough things online that you can pick stuff to do peer critiques, and everybody should. All of you have 4 or 5 things to pick from yourself to do self critiques. And if you want to do something from one of the foam pieces that aren't covered with paper mache, I mean that's totally fine. It doesn't really matter. The restriction is it needs to be something done for this class this semester. And that's I think I mentioned to you guys that somebody went to Amsterdam or something like that about 6 months before the semester started, and they were trying to do the critique from something that they saw in a museum that they went to, and stuff like that is not going to cut it. So, but I'm glad that you guys saw what she was doing and what Reagan was doing, and I'm glad you guys appreciate that as well. Uh, and again, I wanted to remind people, you do that, if you do this and turn it in before Sunday at midnight, I know that's early before the assignments due. Do it, turn it in before midnight, you do get extra credit. All right, and I want to go through the abstractions, and I most of these I think we've seen, but there are a couple that I don't think we have seen yet. So I just want to go through and okay, these are really good examples of the responses. Hallie did a really good job with their responses. I'm just going through this portion of it really quick. I Did we see this one earlier? I think we did, didn't we? This is one of those
Yeah.
where
I'm
if
fairly
you
certain we saw that one last week.
okay. I think I mentioned the outside surface is untouched and it needs to be fiddled with a bit. Okay, but we did look at that one. All right. Okay, I remember we looked at that one. Definitely remember that one. This person, there's only one comment right here. And let's see, there's that comment. This one is a little bit short. So if you need to add to one of your comments to get full points, you could just make a second comment on the same person's work and just email me and say, hey, I made other comments. All right, yeah, we looked at that. Okay, yeah, I remember we did look at almost all of these. I was just wondering if we had some new ones that came in. And I know that some people did resubmit their sculptures. I'm going to go through that again and double check everything and make sure that I've got everything, the grading and stuff like that. So if you don't have um, stuff graded yet, I'm working on that this week, and I should get it taken care of. So all right, let's see. Okay, so that's all of that. Now, last week I talked really briefly about the texture and color tile. We do have a couple things that were submitted to talk about, but I want to go through this the color and texture tile assignment more thoroughly so people have a better idea of what's going on. Before we get to that, do either of you have any questions about the peer and self-critiques or any of the other stuff that we looked at?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay. All right, now, did I show you guys the painting on like early sculptures, early marble sculptures, I mean?
Yeah, there were the Greek ones that were painted, right?
Right. I'm trying to find some famous examples of, let's see. All right, yeah, I think that this is a good illustration. And I know I included some videos for people to watch too. One of the Enlightenment era art critics talked about the white marble from Renaissance period that was preserved during the Renaissance period. They were talking about the white marble of Greek and Roman statuary, talking about, this represents the most pure style of art. And there were even Renaissance commentators that were talking about it. And we look at some of what things look like historically, and the way people know that is that when you microscopically examine these marble sculptures, these pigments are found in the pores of the stone. And you can see, like, just from this one right here, the Archer, it's amazing how uh, colorful they are. And some of these are just astounding with, how much color they have in them. The problem arises because a lot of people forget when workers during the Renaissance were pulling these out to sell them on to the wealthy families who are buying them. Uh, the mud and mold had infested the paint on these things to the point where it was disgusting, and they cleaned them off. They scoured them as much as they could. But the problem is 300 years later, 400 years later, you have writers in the early 1700s, late 1600s, talking about how um, the high sculptural art is all pure and white, and that was used to support uh, racist propaganda as early as 1725, if you guys can believe that. Racism as a conversation point or a preaching point in newspapers and stuff like that. The earliest published articles and opinion pieces talking about the supposed inferiority and superiority of different racial types didn't show up until about 1725, I believe. And this was one of those things that was used to support it, which I think is pretty awful. And there's a whole set of politics about it too. Um, it was a way in the Americas. It was a way of driving a wedge between the African slaves and the white indentured servants from Europe that were also treated really horribly. And sometimes the biggest difference between them was that the African slaves, their children were born into slavery, and it was harder to for people to prove that children born to indentured servants were also servants and or essentially slaves as well. And the reason why the wedge was driven is because people did not, at the time, did not want the indentured servants to remain friends with the black slaves, the African slaves. Some of these are really amazing what they were doing. Do you remember what I was telling you about Severius Septimus, the founder of London?
I don't think I recall.
Well, the founder of London in second, third century AD, right around there, he was a Roman emperor. His name was Severius Septimus, and the artwork that survived, the mosaics that showed him and his wife, for example, and his family. People thought that the skin tones evident in the mosaic were because of the artists that were trying to liken him to themselves. And when going through a lot of these, 1800-year-old busts around London, people in the 80s uh, started really looking microscopically at it, and they found the pigments there that illustrated that it was painted with a very dark skin. And then later on, they found out in the 90s that Severius Septimius was actually born in Libya, and his family were Black Africans that in an area that was basically a Roman state, and they were able to get into citizenship. And he became, after a generation or two of that, he was able to become an emperor. And his wife was from Syria, I believe. So really startled a lot of people, but most people were thinking, yeah, so, which I think is a good attitude to have. It shouldn't be startling. But as sculptors, most people in this class, you're used to digital painting, you're used to painting, and different kinds of things like that. But in sculpture, we're usually just working with materials, and we let the materials be what they are. We don't really think a lot about applying color and applying texture. And this whole module is all about applying texture and applying color, and trying to think about exploring those ideas. And there's two elements to it. First is I mentioned last week, everybody is using their cardboard box to cut 12 squares, and as close as you can get to an exact square is better. Get it as close as you can because you're going to put them together into cubes. And these squares you're going to get 12 of them, and 6 of them you're going to apply textures to, and 6 of them you're going to apply colors to. And I talk about the color part, and then also talk about the texture part. The color part, I think I provide like 5 or 6 of these color wheel things, but you can do whatever you want. And the color combinations, color schemas, those are you can use whatever ones you want, but most of these color wheel resources that I provided, and again, they're right here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think so. I did 6 of them, but I would just say whatever ones, go and look at each of them, just decide on which one's best. But what the whole point of this process is, you're going to pick 3 of the color schemes or color combinations. And this is tetradic, pentatic, that's kind of a cool one. Triadic, analogous, monochromatic, and complementary. You're going to pick 3 of those. And then each of those 3, again, we're talking about the color tiles. Each of those 3, you're going to do 2 different sets of color combinations. So if you're going to choose complementary, you're going to pick something like that, and then use the complement. In this case, if the primary color is red, the complement, of course, is green. If the primary color is purple, move that around. If the primary color is purple or brown or whatever, I wonder why this is not working too well. I wonder why. That's kind of irritating. Okay, so we're not, that one I may get rid of. I don't know, you guys who are designers and stuff like that probably know better ones. And if you do know a better one, please let me know, because I would like to have like 3 different options that are really easy to use. Oh, this is excellent. This is the Sessions College one is one of my favorites because it is very easy to use. And in this one, you just pick a principal color, whatever you want to do, and then you can choose a set of harmonies or a color schema or any of that's what these are. This gives you 6 different options. And I think in the module we talked about tetradic, triadic, complementary and split complementary, monochromatic and analogous. And we also talk about achromatic. Achromatic is not really a color scheme, it's devoid of color. So it's going to be shades of white and gray. We do complementary. That's when, notice that these circles are opposite each other. Complement is when we are dealing with opposite sides of a color wheel. This color wheel is the standard 3-color color wheel. Do you guys know how many other color wheels there are?
A lot, I imagine.
Yeah, you're right. There are a lot. And one of my favorites to work with is the 5-color color wheel, where there's 5 essentially 5 principal colors. For this class, the 3-color color wheel is just fine. Don't worry about anything else. But when you do this, one of the reasons I like the Session College one is I can move this to whatever principal color I want. Here's nice purple there. And then you can see right here what happens as I move things around. Monochromatic is going to be just different shades of the same color. Analogous means it's right next to each other. Split complementary means that if my principal color is purple, the complement is going to be yellow. But for a split complement, you're going to go on either side. And that can vary quite a bit or as little as you want. And then triadic is, it doesn't matter what your principal color is. The other 2 colors in this particular color harmony are on exact opposite sides of the circle. It's 3 equidistant points on the circle. So if I'm going to go closer to the circle center, the 3 or the two of the colors of the triadic are going to be equally close to the center. And then the tetradic seems kind of chaotic, that but it's essentially four very different ones. Sometimes it's some of them have them as perfectly spaced around squares, but not all of the color circle programs do that. So it's just sometimes it's like I said, perfectly spaced squares or points of a perfectly spaced square. Most of the time, it's going to be a rectangle like this. And sometimes it's completely randomized colors too. I mean, that's a color scheme just as much as the others. And so when you do the color tile for the square, again, for the color cube, you have 6 different tiles to work with. Each one, I want you to pick, or for the color cube, I want you to pick 3 different color schemes. And for each of those color schemes, you're going to do 2 faces using that color scheme with different colors. And some of the collages that people have made, they've used felt, they've used cloth. Magazines are really good. Magazines with photos are really good. Sometimes, a lot of times, I recommend you go to the paint section of different hardware stores, like Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot, and you can look at their design books that they have that are free, or design magazines that they give out for free, or paint chips. And what I like about that is that almost all of the color stores or paint counters that have paint chips that you can actually pick up and take, they show you the adjacent blends of the color, where they either put white and black into the pigment or different neutral tones into the pigment, so you get variation. So that's really fun to work with as well. And in this assignment, I'm rather specific about the collages, that they need to have at least 9 pieces in the collage. So anything less than 9 pieces, go back and add to it. So there is at least 9 pieces. And we're going to look at
I
some
do have
examples.
a clarifying question about the color tiles.
Yes.
So just to clarify that I heard it right, because I have done 3 of my 6 tiles, but I was saving the other 3 just in case I was getting something wrong. So we pick one color scheme to fit 2 tiles, and then on 2 tiles we use the same colors, just in different patterns and shapes.
You can use different colors for the 2
Oh,
different of the same color scheme. So if you're doing
oh, it's the same color
complementary,
scheme, but you can do different colors.
right. So
Right.
if
Okay. Thank
if
you.
you're using complements, then one would be blue and orange, and another one could be green and red. But
Gotcha.
both of them you're working with complements. If you're doing analogous, one could be different shades of yellow, and another one could be different shades of purple, if you wanted to. So they do not have to use the same colors. Does that help at all?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, all right, good. That's a really good question. Thank you. But when you do the mosaic, it does need to have at least 9 pieces. And let's see where I do talk about that directly. I'm trying to find downward here. So I talk about it in these 2 paragraphs, I believe. I'm sorry, I can't find it now. I will go back and make that more clear, but it is in here that it does need to have at least 9 pieces of uh, material for your collages. So, all right. So I will put that in there. If you've already finished them, the reason why I want to do this is because we can see, look at this example. See right here, how many different pieces has the person put in this collage? Only 3. And that really does not count as a collage at all. This, however, with the several different little triangles, that's a collage. 3 pieces of material is not a collage. So I am sorry if you can't find it in here. I thought it was really easy to see. It looks like it did not define the collage in this. So I am sorry about that. Because I did define it in an earlier iteration of this, and I wonder why this saved the wrong iteration. That is frustrating. So if you're one of the people that already turned this in and your collage used less than 9 pieces, that is something that is important. It needs a collage is not really a collage without multiple pieces of paper in it. And if it's just like 2 or 3 pieces, like we have in one of these examples down here, that's not going to cut the mustard. It needs to be 9 pieces. Like this one has 3 pieces, they did not get a very good grade. So I'm going to I'll have to find that. And I'm sorry about that. I should double check that. But I've done this class for several years and I don't know why I can't find it in this iteration. Okay. So I will fix that and address that right away. So I hope that makes sense. For the color part, you need to do 6 different tiles. Out of those 6 different tiles, you are going to be picking 3 different color combinations. And for each of those 3 different color combinations, you can do 2 different, use 2 different sets of color. So again, if you're doing a complementary one could be orange and blue, and another one could be yellow and purple. So you don't have to use the same colors for everything. For monochromatic, different shades of red, different shades of purple, for those. And I hope that makes sense. Now for the texture tiles, and these, another reason why I need these to, you're in a university level class, your collage should be of several pieces. It should take a bit, it should take each of these tiles should take a half an hour to 45 minutes to do. And when you're just gluing down 3 or 4 pieces onto something, that's really not a collage. And that's only going to take you a couple minutes. And I do mention that the time factor as well in this. But so that's enough about the color. I do want to talk about the texture part. Now, I'm not going to ask you guys if anybody has emotional issues or is on the spectrum. I am on the spectrum, and one of the things that I find that is really helpful is a senses journey. I've also had friends that deal with depression. They find that this is really helpful too, and other people who have stress. And sometimes some of my kids just enjoy doing this because it's fun. But a senses journey is when you go for a walk with the intent of paying very close attention to what is around you. And it could be the things that impact your body, like wind or smells, and it could be things that impact your senses, like textures. Uh, and sometimes it's just a good idea you can do this in your apartment and you can do this outside just to get your mind going about what kind of textures to use. And if we go back to this part of the module, let's see. If we go back to the quiz right here, I want to do this exercise, Tanis, with you and Jaziel. Many people have taken this quiz already. And this right here examples of textures, that's one of the hardest things to do. You only have to list 12 of them, but it's almost impossible to get started. And that's why I put 5 right there. But I want to just go with you guys. I want to brainstorm some texture ideas, excuse me, or texture descriptors. And this is why I suggest going on the senses walk, because it can be difficult to get started. So I'm going to name a couple textures, and then I'd like you guys to start naming textures, and each of us should name. We'll go around a couple times, but I want all of you to, or yeah, both of you to name like 2 or 3 textures without repeating. So for me, um, I'll list 3 textures, and then I'll have Jassy list 1 and Tanis list 1, and then we'll go around again. My 3 textures are going to be um, uh, like plasticky, like saran wrap is one texture. Another one would be like rubber cement, sticky. Another one would be slimy. So, Jassiel, what's a texture for you to name?
Gritty, coarse, like the sandpaper.
Okay,
Um,
good,
mm,
excellent.
yeah.
How about you, Tennis?
I was thinking like rugged or uh silky and oh, I had 2 R ones. Forgot what the other one was.
No, but that's great. And then for me, I'm thinking, I don't know what you would call it, but when you have a ream of paper, that edge where you have just the cascading ends of paper, I really like that texture. What would you call that one?
I wanted to say like torn, but that's not really a
Well,
texture.
oh no, yeah, no, yeah. The texture name for that is decal. Believe it or not, that's a word that I know. So decal is a good texture. That's a beautiful texture. I like crinkly is another one. I'm thinking like sandstone, weathered sandstone. That would be an awesome texture. Okay, how about you, Jassiel? What's another texture name?
Probably like maybe like fuzzy, fluffy. Um, Let me see. Velvety.
Velvety? Oh,
Yes.
that's great. Those are
Yeah.
great. How about you, Tanis? What are some other textures?
One I thought of was like a netted texture, like if you're like wearing a mask and like the eyes have those weird like nets over them for you to see
Oh
through.
yeah, yeah. Excellent. Very good. I'm thinking like knit, like a sweater. A knit sweater texture. Um, uh, Polyester. That I mean, the particular shine of polyester is unforgiv. I was going to say unforgivable. It's unforgettable. And I'm thinking like jeans fabric, just the canvas texture. Okay, Jaziel, your turn again.
Mm, I'm thinking about like food now, like maybe like runny.
Okay,
Is that a
good.
texture? I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And you just made me think of my kids in winter and their noses. So no, that's great. How about you, Tanis? What's another texture?
She brought up food, and that reminded me, a lot of the textures I have for my texture tiles are from like wrappers and papers that food come in because I eat a lot because I'm diabetic. So I was thinking like a papery texture or like you know those like little paper holders you like bake cupcakes in? One of
Yeah,
those
yeah,
like super
yeah. The cupcake
like
holders.
flat
Yeah,
sandy kind of textures because they're not like
yeah.
totally smooth, but they're too thin.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And so if you haven't taken those are all great. You guys are doing awesome. But if you haven't already taken this quiz, um, this, I think we just came up with some really good ideas. And if you can't think of a list of 12 textures, do what we just did. You have family members, roommates, whatever, slow running strangers, and just sit around and brainstorm some textures and write them down. So that was a perfect solution. So you guys did a great job. Thank you. And going back to this, the senses journey is something that you can do going through your apartment or going outside, looking at stuff and even collect some of the textures. Tanis, as you were working on your textured tiles, did you go outside at all to collect any of the textures?
I went outside very rarely because for some reason I was just having a hard time thinking of textures to collect outside, but I think I was overthinking it because there's so much grass and little twigs, and there's definitely a bunch of leaves on the ground now because it's fall.
Right.
Probably some pebbles here and there.
Yeah, exactly. And so, some of the textures I want, as you guys are thinking of this, I also want you to think about stuff using texture material in ways that you maybe not wouldn't normally think about, combining them. Like some of the really successful ones I've seen is where people have taken paper shopping bags, for example, cut them into strips, 2 inch wide strips, and then if you uh, cut across the strip, not all the way, but like 2/3 of the way, and you do that, and you make your cuts about 1/8 of an inch apart or so, and curl it a bit or fluff it up a bit. If you can imagine that kind of a strip and then overlapping the strips, you can create like a fur texture with it. And another thing you can do is if you have faux fur, you can rub glue into it and just fiddle with it as the glue dries, and you get a particularly disgusting physical texture that is just really gross. Another fun texture is cutting strips of cardboard, across the grain. And then if they're about a half an inch wide strips, you can glue them on end onto your and make a texture that way. So you just see the corrugated pattern in the texture. That becomes really interesting. Another thing that I've seen is taking the dried leaves and splitting them down the center and then gluing the edge of the leaf from that split central vein against the cardboard tile and overlapping them so that you have almost scales with the leaves. I've also seen people take helicopters from maple trees, things like that, and gluing those so that they overlap almost like feathers. That looks really, really fascinating. Um, and you can so you can use leaves in different ways. You can use uh, plant material in different ways. I've seen people use grass and weeds so that it almost looks like animal fur, or taking cardboard, spiraling it up, um, refolding and refolding it to the point where it almost falls apart, and using that as kind of a texture, or even making a like it down here. This is really kind of a fun thing because this person just took um, a cereal box. This is all the inside of a cereal box, and they just cut strips and overlap the strips, not really weaving them, but just doing different things to overlap them. And that looks really fascinating. I've seen people do the same kind of thing with uh, paper clips, where they kind of inserted paper clips into this kind of thing. They would take the paper clips and unfold them. And so some of these long horizontal and vertical strips would actually be metal paper clips. That looks really fascinating. This kind of thing, to me, almost looks like an abstracted cityscape from above, where they're just playing with different kinds of cardboard and cutting off or stripping off the outside of some cardboard, leaving some of it on, making patterns with it, like this area and this area. And that can look really fascinating. That's a fun texture to do. And I really like this kind of thing where you actually make it like a 3D landscape as a textural component to the tile. And that looks fascinating. So there's lots of really fun ideas that can be played with, or even this kind of thing where you start getting a sense of layering because the person is stripping off um, some of the cardboard, some of the exterior of the cardboard. And this is really a fascinating thing where the person is using sandpaper as well as cardboard to experiment with lots of different textures. And that's kind of fun. So this sample right here is textures where they're almost all just from that senses walk outside, where they're paying attention to the natural textures that they encounter. And that can be really fascinating. And then one thing I like about this one quite a bit is the person made the texture. This is with organic components, and then they spray painted the whole thing one solid color. And I like that because it really forces you to pay attention to the textural quality as opposed to paying attention to the materials that are used in the texture. And what's really fascinating about this one is I don't know if you can see on this side on the left and on this side on the right of this yellow cube, they did several layers of paint so that the quality of texture that they had begun to build with different material that they put on that, by layering the spray paint over and over and over again, it starts making its own texture too, which is fascinating. And you could do something similar to this if you put something like this where you have that looks like to me that these are the tops of dried weeds glued on, and then stringing like the hot glue over this with really thin strings, and then spray painting that. That's going to give you a really interesting texture. Another fun texture that I've seen is putting down uh, plastic wrap, spray painting that, and before the paint dries, put down another layer of plastic wrap, spray painting that, and doing that about 5, 6, 7 times. You get a really fascinating texture that is just, I mean, you can't do it. You can't make that texture any other way. And that looks really fascinating. So yeah, definitely play around and have some fun with this kind of stuff. Now this one, I'm not as happy with this, and I have some of these included because they are bad examples. This is a good texture. They glued grass down and did a nice job. This, not so much. Now, if you're going to use, it looks like they started to kind of weave the grass a little bit. If you want to do that, cover the whole thing with solid weaving or even a woven texture. And that's going to be really very interesting. This is not the kind of level of work that I'm expecting. This one on the right with those leaves, I think that's a start of something really cool. But if you're going to use the lapping leaf texture and it's going to start looking like scales, cover the entire thing with this. What I would recommend is get enough leaves so that you are overlapping the leaves so that it goes past the boundaries of that 4 inch by 4 inch cardboard tile. And then before you make the cube, cut off where it overlaps. So you get this really fascinating leaf texture where you don't see the entirety of the leaf. You know, when it comes to the boundary of the cardboard tile, it's trimmed off. You know, I think that would be a lot more interesting than this person just glued down 3 leaves. So it's a start of something, but it just is not going anywhere. This kind of thing, this is really interesting to me because they took pins and they put in, like, what is that, like 400 pins? That's really interesting to me. That takes time and that takes thought. Wrapping it with a single layer of foil, not so much. If you're going to do the foil, what I would recommend is make an under texture, smear it with glue, and then rub the foil on top of that so it captures all that texture you made underneath. That's going to be interesting. Doing something like this where it's just, I mean, it took them a minute and a half, and that's counting glue drying time. And I'm just not very impressed with that. Another thing that might be really interesting is gluing the whole surface, covering the whole surface with a bunch of sticks, putting foil on top of that, and then using the fingertips to burnish the foil down onto the sticks after they've dried in place. That could be interesting. Do you see what I'm saying about creating these textures? Does that make sense?
Yes. I do have another clarifying question for textures, technically too,
Okay.
but so you mentioned for color tiles you want at least 8 things. Does that also apply to the textures?
No, you can do
Oh,
with the color collages. It needs to have at least 9 pieces.
oh, 9. It was 9. Yeah.
Yeah, and with the I just with the textural component, I just want it to demonstrate that you put thought and time into it. If you want to use foil, another way to do this is take a sheet of foil and fold it in back and forth in about quarter-inch sections. So you'd have overlapping folds. That could be really interesting. And then do something interesting with that. We're actually developing a texture. Reflective
Gotcha.
is really just, it doesn't show any evidence of time or thought process other than, oh, I'm going to use foil. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And then my second question was, it says on the assignment parameters, and you showed us some examples of students spray painting entire sides of their texture cube one color, or the whole cube one color. Um, would it be an all right compromise if, because I noticed a lot of the textured objects I have been gathering are one color. I have a lot of white things. I have a lot of like sky blue things. So would it be a good idea, do you think, to kind of collage all those colored items, making sure the textures match, of course, to one side of the cube?
I think that'd be really cool. So what you're saying is, instead of spray painting it, you put all the yellow things, textural pieces together and do that on one face, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That'd be very cool. It kind of like with this right here, where the person is using a lot of these kind of juniper leaves, but they're all the same color. Doing something like that might be interesting. I don't think this is really a good example because it's so there's not a lot of thought behind it. But if you found several things that were sky blue that were different and just made a fascinating texture with all the sky blue stuff on one face of the texture cube, yeah, that would totally do it. One of the things that is less successful, that is not successful at all really, is when somebody tries to make a texture cube and using different colors to make a color collage with the textures, trying to do both things at the same time. And that's not going to work. But Tanis, what you're talking about is completely different. You're talking about taking textural components that all happen to have the same color and putting them together. So you get a really fascinating texture experiment. And I think that would be totally cool.
Great.
Yeah, I'm going to go in and I'm gonna make that change. I am really sorry. I it was in a previous iteration of this, and I don't know why it's no longer showing up in Canvas the way that I had written it. So I'm gonna make that change right now. Okay. All righty. So I took care of that. I I think that's pretty clear. Um, I hope that is really clear. We talked about it quite a bit. I'm thinking I'm going to go through and rework this so that it's more clear. When I had originally done this, it was all in a live class with real live people and everything like that, and everybody got what was going on. And I don't understand why in this particular iteration in Canvas the clarity that I had originally that I put into it is all missing. It sounds terrible. If you guys get confused on assignments, please do what Tanis just did. Ask me to clarify. I really appreciate that. And it lets me see when something doesn't happen exactly the way I expect it to. So all right, I think that this is good. Is all this making sense to you too, Jassiel?
Yeah, I think I got everything. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So what I'm gonna stop sharing now. Some of the things I want people to remember is we do have the peer and self-critique that is going to be due in a couple weeks. Please, if you take care of that, whichever part of that you take care of in the next week or so, that is going to be, you're going to get extra credit for turning it in. And then I also want to talk about really briefly paper mache. Now, this is, you don't have to even read this until like next week, but I want you guys to be aware of this. Jesse, are you the one that already paper mache'd your biomorphic carving?
Yeah, I already did it.
Okay. If you don't mind, would you just minute to talk about what the process is?
Yeah, so I believe that in our boxes and our kits, we got like flour and some glue. And so what I did was I put the glue in and some water, and then I mixed those together, and then I added the flour in, and then we also got some newspaper, and I just used that to like kind of cover it over my sculpture, and by dipping it into the glue and flour water mixture.
All right, good. So
Yeah.
but it wasn't that hard to figure it out, right?
No, it wasn't. But I would recommend if you have like gloves, I'd probably use gloves maybe, and to really cover the surface with like a towel or something so it doesn't get everywhere. But yeah.
You know, this is something else, exactly what you said. I had put that in an earlier iteration of this. I had said, see if you can use, or try to use gloves and make sure you cover the tabletop. And in the video, I mentioned that as well. When I do the demonstration for the assignment, I do mention that it might be a good idea to do gloves where it says my brilliant demonstration. And I'm glad, Jesse, you bring that up because that makes me realize that this again isn't, this does not have that in there. So I will put that in there as well. What I recommend is when you guys do the paper mache, get a large plastic garbage bag, like the kind that you would put inside of um, a, a big garbage can, or a bag for leaves or stuff like that, and put that down as your tablecloth. Because then when you're all done, you can just gather it up and throw it away. Put that down for your tablecloth, and definitely get gloves for this. And I would recommend going to the Dollar Tree and getting crappy throwaway gloves that like plastic gloves, like dishwashing gloves, anything like that. The ones that I use are either going to be the vinyl gloves, or I also use calving gloves. The calving gloves I use when I do paper marbling and stuff like that because they go up past your elbow and they're really, really good. But if you do that, I kind of have to put masking tape around the wrist to keep them up. But what you're going to do, just like Jassy was talking about, is in your kit, do you guys have like a Tupperware type container?
Yes, I got a
Yes.
Tupperware.
Okay.
Mine has the a bag of like the yellowy goopy stuff in it.
Yeah, okay. Because what that container is for, this stuff, once you mix it, you can use it for a couple days before it dries out, as long as you make sure that you have the lid on it. And what I do is I put some of the glue in, about half of what you've got, and about half the flour in, and what I start off with is I put half the glue in to the container. I pour water on that until it's pretty thin, and I usually fill up the container about halfway with that, and make sure that the glue is stirred in. And by this time, you also have your gloves on. And then I pour in about half of the flour, and I mix it wearing the gloves, because as Jassiel can attest, this glue, if you have any hair on the back of your hand at all, you will find out very quickly as you try to wash this off, because it just pulls all the hair off, and it can be um, uncomfortable. We'll say that. And so wearing gloves, I'll go through and I will mix it with my hands by pinching all the little balls that the flour makes and trying to get all those lumps out. I'll go through and I'll do that as much as I can. I do this all on the tabletop where I've already put my garbage bag down and everything to cover the surface of the tabletop. So I'll pinch it. I'll try to get that done as much as possible. Get as many of those lumps out as I can, and it's still going to be. Do you guys know what iceberg drive-in, when the milkshake melts all the way? Do you know what that texture is like?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit thicker than chocolate milk, but it's still pretty runny. That's the kind of texture you want. Absolutely melted milkshake. And I'm saying iceberg drive-in because they use ice cream that doesn't have the cellulose powder in it that McDonald's does. McDonald's, the milkshake is going to have a very different texture. But anyway, so it's not going to be really thick. It's not going to be really goopy. It's going to be kind of thin, but you want to get that mixed and then let it sit for a while. And while it's sitting, that's when you want to tear your newspaper. And I would recommend tearing two different things. One is going to be inch wide strips and one is going to be half-inch wide strips. And if you tear from the top to the bottom of the page, that is going to give you pretty even strips. If you tear it across the page, you're going to get lots of triangles and funny shapes. And the reason why I'm saying two different widths of strips is if we look at Jason's sculpture here, these areas that are small, or these areas that are kind of tight, that's where you're going to want to use the thin strips. And the areas that are kind of wide and broad, that's where you're going to want to use the big strips. And some areas, when you have a lot of tight textures together, you may want to tear this up into squares almost, that are, half-inch squares or 1-inch squares, and because that's going to help you to get in there and really cover that texture. And the process is I have a couple of videos that I linked to that you guys can see what the process is. And I also have my demonstration where you can watch the process. But like Jassiel was saying, you put the newsprint into that glue and water and flour mixture. And then with one hand, you're going to pull it out. And with your other hand, you're going to use your fingers like a squeegee to get the extra stuff off. And you're going to use that to loop it around your sculpture. Now, I'll give you a kind of a hint. The first layer does not stick to the foam very well. So what you're going to do, like areas, you guys can see where my mouse is over the picture, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. In this kind of an area, what you're going to do is you're going to tear a strip that is a little bit longer than what it would take to wrap this all the way around. And what you're going to do is wrap the wet paper, it's wet with the paper mache mixture, you're going to wrap it around so that it's long enough that the end attaches to itself. You're going to kind of use your fingers to straighten it out and to tighten it a bit. What that does is it allows, when you overlap the end, that allows the glue to attach to itself. It's not trying to find purchase on the foam. And it does take a little bit of playing around and stuff like that. That's why you're going to be doing 2 layers. That first layer may be kind of messy and weird, and that's totally fine. But that first layer, you're going to do strips that are long enough so that the end will attach itself or can be used to attach the glue to the paper as you loop it around the foam. Does that make sense? Am I explaining that very well?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you're going to do that. You're going to cover it. And it may be that it's going to always be the first several strips are always going to be, you're going to be working with really lumpy stuff. But as you squeegee this, step away for a couple minutes, come back. Every time you step away, put the lid on your container so it doesn't dry out. And every time you work on this, you're going to get fewer and fewer lumps in your paper mache. So the first thing is you're going to cover the whole thing, leave it on that the garbage bag, let it dry. Then you're going to sand it down, sandal all the wrinkles out, and you can see. I hope you can see. Can you see where he sanded this down? Right through here. Can you see that kind of sanding? And like right through here, you can see evidence of the sanding. And right through here, can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Because what that sanding does is it helps it to get really smooth. And that's what you want. You want it to be as smooth as possible. Then you're going to do a second layer of paper mache after it dries completely. And after that dries, you're going to sand it again because you want this to be pretty smooth. And this will help to smooth out all the little bumps and nicks and fuzz on that original sculpture, but it also gives you a substrate on which to paint and apply things. The paint is not going to stick to the foam very well. That's another reason why you need to do the paper mache. And 2 layers are what's recommended. You do the first layer, sand it down so it's smooth, do a second layer. It's going to be a lot easier to get the paper mache to stick to the second layer because you're not trying to get it to stick to foam. It's going to stick to the paper and that's what it's made to do. And then you're going to sand that down so you don't have wrinkles. And you can see he's done a pretty good job making sure that this is pretty smooth. And that yellow glue that you're using, it's basically Elmer's glue, but it's designed for woodworking. And what that does is after you've done this, gotten both of these layers on there, you sanded it down, this sculpture is going to be pretty dang sturdy. You know, that glue is designed so that when it hardens, it gets really tough. And what that translates to is this is another reason why you want to be working on a plastic garbage bag. You're going to be wanting to work with gloves because it is a bear and a half to clean up. You're not going to want to dump any of this down the drain. When you are all done with all your paper mache, the easiest way to get rid of this is to throw, wrap it all up in the garbage bag and throw the whole thing away. Do not pour this down the drain. Right? Does that make sense to you guys?
Yes.
The worst thing you can do, especially if you're living in somebody else's apartment, if you're renting, do not put this down the drain. When you are all done cleaning up, get wet paper towels, wipe up stuff, and throw them in a plastic garbage bag. Do not rinse anything down the drain. I want to make sure everybody understands that. I'm sorry, I did not intend to. We've gone a couple minutes over, but does this look like something that you guys can do with the paper mache and stuff?
It seems a little intimidating, but I'm sure I can get it done.
Okay, because we're going to talk about it more next week, and I'm going to even show my demonstration video next week. And so it's not something to worry about right now, but I want you to be mindful that it is coming up. All right, guys, thank you so much for being with me today. Any last questions or observations before we end?
I don't believe so.
All right, great. Well, thank you very much for being with me. I look forward to seeing the killer tiles and stuff that you guys are doing. And I look forward to seeing what else you guys come up with. But like I said, I will be finishing up the grading and talking about stuff. I want people, if you want to redo, rework, and resubmit, I want you to be able to do that in plenty of time before the end of the month. So I will try to get everything graded and up to date by this weekend. All right. So, and if you guys have any questions, just yesterday morning, I spoke with somebody at length. We spent about 45 minutes going through, asking questions, answering them, clarifying things. If you guys need that, let me know. We'll set up a Teams call and go over stuff. All right. Okay, thank you guys. Thanks for being with me. I hope you guys have a wonderful week and weekend, and I look forward to
Thank you
talking
very
to you next
much.
Wednesday.
Thank
Thank
you. Have a great
you.
night.
All right, you too.